It was the heady days of summer. Come on, there were 2 hot days in July, as I recall, and we move into autumn. It's the ritual. Blazers are taken out of wardrobes, children are put in them. Somehow they've grown so much, they're going to need a new one. White shirts, white blouses are prepared, trousers and skirts are ironed, new shoes are bought, and the children go off to their schools. But what awaits them? What awaits them as regards their tuition, the wearing of masks, and of course possibly extra help to get over the pandemic? Who better to turn to than Education Secretary Gavin Williamson, who joins me now. What awaits the children of the land? Good morning, Secretary of State.
Good morning, Nick. I'm sure you'd want to join me in sort of wishing children the very best. There's going to be a lot of excitement, maybe a bit of nervousness. You know, children going to school for the first time or moving on to a new school.
And a few tears as well, probably.
I have no doubt, probably from parents
and
as
teachers.
Much as it will be from. I think teachers are really looking forward to welcoming kids back. But what we're wanting to see and what we are going to be seeing is, yes, we're going to be seeing testing in secondary schools to make sure that we're doing as much as we can do to catch those children who are coming in who maybe picked up COVID over the summer. But we're wanting children to experience a much more normal pre-pandemic education experience as possible. So, you're seeing the end of bubbles, children not having to wear masks. We want, as we've been enjoying over summer, a much more normal experience in terms of our lives over summer. We want children to be having a much more normal school life as well.
What is the government's suggested role for testing? How should it take place, Secretary of State?
So what we're asking schools to do, this was done very successfully back in March. We're asking all secondary schools to be offering asymptomatic testing for all their pupils as they come back in. We did this in the previous term. It worked incredibly well, identified cases before those children were obviously in the classroom. And we have every confidence that will work well this time as well, identifying cases and keeping COVID out of schools as much as possible. But it's quite a normal thing to do, Nick. I'm not sure if you've done one of those lateral flow tests.
Yes.
It involves you shoving something very far in the back of your mouth and very far up your nose. It's so many children. I know both my daughters have got very used to it, as have I as Education Secretary as well.
We wish the children well, and there's going to be some extra tutoring made available, I understand. How will children qualify for that?
Well, what we're asking schools to do is identify the children who need that tutoring most. What we've seen during this pandemic, you've seen some children adapt very swiftly and really well in terms of learning from a home environment in a remote way. You've seen other children struggle. You've seen sometimes children from most disadvantaged backgrounds have some of the greatest difficulty. We had that programme running before the summer. You saw 250,000 pupils signed up to it. We're wanting to expand that, so there's sort of 2 million pupils will able to benefit from it over this coming year. Quite simply, it seems to work. It seems to work very well. We wanted to build on what seemed to be an early success and continue to expand it. And teachers will be the ones who are best to judge as to which pupils will best benefit from it.
You're right to identify the struggle, to use your word, but was the struggle perhaps made unnecessarily harsh? Because research now finds that UK children miss more than double schooling their peers in 14 countries enjoined, including France, Spain, Austria, Lithuania and Hungary. I know it's the benefit of hindsight, I understand that, but looking back, were too many schools closed for too long, Secretary of State?
Well, as you'll probably know, those statistics are on a UK basis, and actually schools in England were open for longer, for more pupils and earlier than in sort of Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, which obviously I don't have a say at. And of course we had twice as many schools open than we saw in terms of Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland as well. But, as Education Secretary, did I ever want to see schools closed? Well, of course, I don't want to see schools closed. As Education Secretary, do I ever want to see schools close again? Never do I want to sort of see that. We've
Can you give
always
me that
got to
pledge, though, Secretary? Respectfully, you can't actually say, Nick, we will not be shutting any schools this school year, can you?
Nick, I will move heaven and earth to make sure that we aren't in a position of having to close schools. We're always trying to strike that sensible balance between giving children that the most sensible, normal, school life back to them, but while recognising we're still in a global pandemic with COVID. But for me, the priority is to get children that normal education experience, what we were experiencing pre-pandemic.
One other aspect regarding education that's making some headlines, school spending per pupil is lower than it was in 2009 in real terms. This is the Institute for Fiscal Studies saying schools in deprived areas face the biggest challenge in making up for lost learning. Noting that you've only been Secretary of State for a couple of years, so this doesn't track back to all your time, why are we in real terms spending less?
Well, this is why, since becoming Education Secretary and since the Prime Minister entered 10 Downing Street, we've been delivering, 2 consecutive years of record increases in education, because we've been wanting to close that gap. We've been wanting to make sure that schools have the maximum amount of resources in order to deliver the best for children. There has been additional money over and above what the IFS has measured that has been going into schools on top of that, but we recognise as we go into a spending review, and it's tempting. I mean, I can almost imagine you as Chancellor of the Exchequer, Nick, sort of sat there engaging in a spending...
I can recall my maths grades, Secretary of State. I know you struggle, and you would not want me as Chancellor of the Exchequer, I can assure you.
It would not act as a glass ceiling to your true abilities, Nick. And if you were the Chancellor of the Exchequer and we can be conducting that negotiation now, yes, we would be doing that. But, we've delivered 2 years of, above inflation increases in terms of, sort of education spending, sort of really putting more money into schools. We'll be looking at that spending review. We want to keep closing that gap.
Is it your ambition, how confident are you that schools in England will have their GCSEs and their A-levels at the end of the school year?
Absolutely, Nick. We've had 2 years where we've not been able to run a normal series of exams. I don't think anyone wants to see a third year of that, whether that's head teachers and teachers and pupils alike. We want to get back to normal, not just in terms of what classroom experience is like, but also the exam experience. And back in July, we set out what exams would look like in 2022, so schools can have an understanding of what they're expecting and, how to prepare and how to get ready.
A couple of other things. Wasn't that long ago you were Defence Secretary. How do you think the men and women acting course to the MOD have behaved with Operation Pitting in Afghanistan?
Well, I, saw the pictures on the screen, and I couldn't help but just feel absolute admiration, not just through the, 16 Air Assault Brigade who are out there, the Royal Air Force who are, so many other service men and women who were putting themselves at risk to help others. It didn't surprise me for a moment. I was always, to see the work, to see the passion, to see the commitment and that desire to help others above themselves, that was all exemplified over these last few weeks by those amazing men and women of our armed forces, but also by the border force that were out there putting themselves at risk, and of course many diplomats as well. And I think all of our thanks goes out to them, because it just goes to show, what truly inspirational people these are. They are indeed inspirational people. A lot of criticism that one of your colleagues, the Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab, he should have been back behind his desk sooner. Do you concur with that, Mr. Williams? Well, Dom's, flying out to Qatar today. He's leading, not just Britain's efforts, but actually global efforts to ensure that those people who, who have still in Afghanistan have safe passage. Would you have gone on holiday just a few weeks after receiving a memo that seemed to suggest Afghanistan was about to crumble? Well, the Foreign Secretary has always, wherever he's been, and of course, wherever he's been on the globe, is always in contact, always on top of things, always doing everything that's needed.
Would you?
As Education Secretary, you tend not to have holidays. You see,
have you not had a holiday this summer?
I got a couple of days up in Scarborough to see my mum and dad, so that was very nice. But Dom at every stage has been working tirelessly to make sure everything that is done, and the Prime Minister has absolute full confidence in him, and is doing everything. Everyone is doing everything they can do, not just to ensure safe passage, but to welcome and give people a warm welcome as they enter this country.
He's been referred to as the Arsenal of the cabinet, effectively doomed or destined for relegation. Who's going to survive longer? Will he still be in post at half term? Who'll be higher in the firmament, Arsenal or Dominic Raab come half term?
Well, I know that Wolves will be beating Arsenal. That's one certainty. Hope. But Dom will absolutely be in the cabinet. He will absolutely be Foreign Secretary. He's absolutely dedicated and committed to delivering for this country, but also for helping those people who need our support in Afghanistan as well.
Good luck to you and all the colleagues, and of course, as you rightly say, for the teachers. They've had a heck of a time. Let's wish them good luck for the new term, and thank you for appearing here on LBC. Education Secretary Gavin Williamson, 1 minute after 8 on LBC. Let's get the news.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, Dominic Raab has flown to Doha for talks with Qatari leaders on the situation in Afghanistan.